Hey teachers! So right now, what is going to happen next school year is very uncertain. We don't know if teachers are going to be back in the classroom, if they're going to be teaching remotely, or if they're going to be doing a little bit of both. But I have heard that there is a good chance that some schools could be starting school remotely in the fall. So in this video, I want to share with you some great back to school, get to know you activities that you can use with your students if you are teaching remotely. As a curriculum developer, we have been working with teachers and schools to help them prepare for what next school year will look like. And some of the questions that we've been getting the most from schools have to do with how do we build community in an online environment. So I have got 10 back to school activities for you, and these activities are great because they're fun, they're going to help your students build relationships with each other, and they'll also give your students an opportunity to practice with whatever online tools you might be using, whether it's Google Classroom or Flipgrid, whatever it is, they're going to get an opportunity to practice with those things as they complete some of those activities. So let's go ahead and dive straight in. My first back to school activity for you is one of my favorite online remote learning activities in general, and that is a virtual scavenger hunt. And one of the things I love about virtual scavenger hunts is there are so many different ones that you can do. And I've actually created another video where I share over 20 different virtual scavenger hunts that you can use with your students no matter what online platform you're using, whether you're using Zoom, Teams, Flipgrid, Google Meet, or Google Hangouts, whatever you're using, you can do these virtual scavenger hunts on any of those platforms. So if you are thinking about doing any type of virtual scavenger hunt, make sure you check out that video for lots of ideas. My second back to school remote activity that I have for you is have your students create some kind of all about me presentation. And when you're deciding what type of presentation to have your students create, think about what they'll be using for the school year while you're teaching remotely. So if you're going to be using mostly Google Apps in Google Classroom, have your students create a Google slideshow presentation about themselves and upload that presentation to Google Classroom. So that way they're practicing using those tools as they share about themselves. Or let's say you're going to be using a program like Flipgrid throughout the year. Have your students record a short video about themselves and then upload the video to a grid. Now, an important aspect of this is not just having students share about themselves, but also having students get to know each other. So after students have created their All About Me presentation and they have uploaded it, you should require them to observe or watch a certain number of their classmates' presentations. So maybe have them watch or look at 5 of the presentations, and for each one, they should leave some kind of comment or response. So in doing that, you're also teaching students how to have discussions remotely and what a discussion board might look like. So you should definitely do some kind of all about me presentation and utilize whatever online tools you are going to have available to you throughout the school year. My third back to school remote activity is a show and tell activity. Now, usually when I'm starting school in the classroom, I always do what I call the brown paper bag activity. And on the first day of school, I give each student a brown paper bag. And on the second day of school, they're supposed to bring that brown paper back with 3 to 5 items that tell about them. And then they get up in front of the class and they share those items and why those items describe them. And you can actually do something very similar in your remote online classroom. So tell students that the next day when your class meets virtually, they need to have 3 small items that they can show the class. And so then you can call on each student one by one. You can allow them to share their items and tell what those items have to do with them. You can allow the other kids to ask questions. Basically, you're doing the exact same thing as you would in a traditional classroom. You're just doing it virtually. My next back to school remote activity is to play get to know you games. And there's literally so many different games that you can play. One of my favorites is a would you rather game. So basically you're gonna give out a bunch of questions. They can be serious, they can be funny. Things like, would you rather go to Disney World or go to the beach? Or would you rather not be able to use your hands or your feet for a day? So it can be serious, it can be funny, but then allow the students to take turns sharing their responses with each other. Other examples of get to know you games could be like 20 questions. So pick one student to think of a person that they're going to be or a place that they want to travel to, and then call on the other students to ask that student yes or no questions until they can figure out what that student is thinking of. If you have a whiteboard feature, for example, in Zoom, there's a whiteboard feature. You can have the students play Pictionary. You could play charades with each other. But there are all kinds of games that you can play virtually to help your students get to know each other and to build relationships with each other. My fifth activity is actually one of my favorite ones, and this is a great way to practice team building in a virtual environment, and that is to host a class design competition. So basically what you're going to do is you are going to encourage students to design a digital logo for the class. So you can have them use any type of online program that you might be using. So there's lots of ways to create logos very simply in various Google apps. And so you will have students design a class logo. You can also assign them to groups. Remember, Google apps are great for working collaboratively, and they can work in small groups to design a logo. But after each student or team has had time to work on a design, they will share those with the class, and the class will vote on which one is their favorite, and that will be the class logo for the year. And something that's really cool is since students are creating these digitally, you can take the class logo that the class votes on, and you can start embedding that logo onto your digital slides and in Google Classroom, and if you're using Flipgrid as your banner for your class. Whatever virtual programs you're using, you can insert that logo to make everything you do very branded and customized and exciting for your students. Next up are STEM challenges. STEM challenges are actually really easy to have your students complete at home because basically you are just asking them to build something in a given amount of time with limited resources. So when you're deciding on a STEM challenge, be sure to think about what are materials that all of my students have at home. All of your students probably have things like socks or utensils or cups, things like that at home. So how can they use those materials that we all have around our houses to build something or create something in a limited amount of time? During the first week or two of school, I always have my students do a lot of writing activities, and a lot of these writing activities can be replicated virtually. So if you do any sort of writing activity where you have students create a list of goals for the year, or maybe they write a letter to you explaining what they like in a teacher. Think about any writing activities that you normally incorporate into back to school and think about how you can do them virtually. And once again, this is a great opportunity to get students practice using tools that they're going to be using remotely throughout the year. So if you plan on having students use Google Docs and Google Classroom, now is a great time to have them typing what they're going to write into Google Docs and then uploading it to Google Classroom. So they're getting writing skills, they're doing some back to school activities, and they're practicing using digital tools all at the same time. Another thing I always use when starting the school year in a traditional classroom environment is back to school read-alouds. And typically I will read at least one read-aloud to the class per day. And each of those read-alouds has to do with social skills or rules or expectations that I have for the students. And so we read the book and then we use that as a conversation starter for the rules and the expectations. And I'll have activities to go with the read-alouds. But you can very easily do a read aloud with your students in an online learning environment as well, just as easily as you could do it in a traditional classroom environment. And if you are looking for back to school read alouds that you can use with upper elementary students, I've actually created a free resource, which I have linked in the description. And that actually has a list of back to school read alouds that you can use. And it has conversation starters and activities that you can use with each book. So make sure to check that out. My 9th back to school activity is interview an administrator, or really any other leader or teacher from your school. If you are in an online learning environment, your students are only getting to see you. They're not getting to see the principal. They're not getting to see the guidance counselor. They're not getting to see resource teachers. But those are all still very important people, and more than likely you're eventually going to be going back into your school building at some point during the school year, and it's good for your students to know who these people are. So invite some of these different people to come to your class meeting, to talk to your students, allow your students to ask them questions. This will be a fun change for your students, and it will help prepare them for when they do go back into a traditional learning environment. All right, we've made it all the way to the end of my list. My 10th and final back to school remote activity is a fun one, and that is have a dance party. There's nothing that will get kids laughing and smiling more than playing fun music and allowing them to get up and dance. And you can do this in a virtual learning environment. You can also turn it into a game, a freeze dance game. So pause the music every now and then and the students have to freeze. And if you see any of the students moving, they have to sit down and you can see who is the last one standing. But I think that allowing kids to get up and dance and have fun is just a great way to build community and to get them excited about learning remotely. So there you have it. Those are 10 back to school games and activities for an online learning environment. I hope you have found some things here that you can use during back to school if you're going to be starting your year virtually. And if you have any other ideas for back to school virtual activities, be sure to leave a comment in the description and let us know. And then after you do that, make sure to like this video and subscribe to my channel. I've got lots of virtual learning videos already listed. I've got a lot more coming out to help you throughout the school year, and I don't want you to miss out on any of those. So until next time, happy teaching!